time has come to start coding. So we've got our script here in the scripts folder. I could start MonoDevelop by double clicking here, but I prefer to go into the inspector and find the object that the script is attached to, and then this little settings here. We've got an edit script option. Either way will be fine. It takes a little while for MonoDevelop to get up and running, so I'll just pause the video for a bit. Okay, here we are up in MonoDevelop. I've increased the font size a little bit to make it a little bit easier for you to see. If this is the first time you've been introduced to a C# program, I'll just take you on a little tour. Here at the top we've got what's known as the namespaces. These are actually libraries of routines that are used over and over again. They're predefined bits of program really. We will be adding to these as we go along, but this will do fine for now. Now, the main unit of any C# code is the class definition. So this is a public class and it's called MoveBasket, which is what we want it to be called. And it's based on another class called MonoBehavior. Now, MonoBehavior is the root class of all the classes we'll define. And the class definition starts here at this opening curly bracket and it finishes down here at the closing curly bracket. Notice these are on the same alignment. Now inside the class definition we have a number of functions. They've created two for us already. One is called start and one is called update. Now start is run once and once only, and that's when the program starts. Update is run every time the screen updates. Now it might be still, but it's actually refreshing itself about 50 times a second. So this update function is running approximately 50 times a second. All functions return a value. Like on a calculator, it returns a value. Now this one is void. Right, and as you know, no one can hear you scream in the void. It's returning nothing, but it's a very definite nothing. Right, so quite a lot of our functions will have this. Now the first thing I'm going to do is create a variable. So right up at the beginning here, I'm going to press enter, gives me a new line, and this is going to be a public float. Now, a float is a decimal number basically, like 2.6 minus 3.7, 4.0, and I'm going to give it a name, bspeed. Okay, you can call things anything you like. Don't have spaces in them. You can use underscores, use capitals, lowercase, but don't have spaces. That's the end of this line, and all lines must end with a semicolon. Now, this is a public variable. This means that we can access it from outside the class definition. It's a float variable. Now, C# is what's known as a strongly typed language. This means that you have to define what type of variable it is. So if you think about it as a box that you store things in, you get different shaped boxes for different things. If you wanted to store pencils, you'd have pencil shaped boxes. If you wanted to store CDs, you'd have CD shaped boxes. In this case, we've got a variable or a box which is specially designed to hold a floating point number. Okay. Now I'm not going to use either of these functions, so thank you very much for creating them for me, but I'm going to create my own function here. This is going to return void, and it's going to be called fixed update. And open up the curly brackets and close them a few lines down. Right, the difference between update and fixed update. As I said, this happens before every screen update. Now, it looks fairly regular, but they're not regular. Sometimes it takes longer to produce a screen than other times. And if we're dealing with speed, movement, it's about movement within a fixed time. So we're going to use fixed update, which does happen at a regular interval. Okay, I hope that's understandable. Right, so in here we're going to get from the input system whether we press the left button or the right button and move the basket. So I'm going to create another variable which is of the float type. I'm going to call it movement. Right. And then I'm going to define it. And I'm going to get it from the input. And now that's the whole input library. A dot now, which will get me to the different properties or methods. In this case, I know I want to just get axis. Now you notice that it actually homes in on the things it thinks you want. Okay, so there we are. We have get axis, and I can double click on that and it puts it in. Now we're only interested in horizontal movements, so I'm choosing the horizontal axis. Now, as well as being strongly typed, C# is case sensitive. It must have a capital H here. Lowercase h just doesn't do it. Now, if you remember, this will either return a -1 if we're pressing the left key, 1 if we're pressing the right key, or 0 if we're pressing neither. Right? So I'm going to multiply that by our speed. So times b speed, and there it is. Now, when we talk about speed, we usually talk about distance per second. But in this case, a second is an awfully long time because this happens about 80 times a second. So we're going to do it over a very small interval of time. So I'm going to multiply that by time dot delta time. Okay. Now, delta time is the time between fixed updates. Okay. So that should produce either a small negative, positive number, or 0. Now we're going to add that to the position of the basket. So I'm going to produce another variable here, and this is going to be a vector3 type. Now vector3 is a more complicated variable. It actually contains 3 floating point number variables called x, y, and z. So it's ideal for storing the x, y, and z coordinates of an object. Okay, so I'm going to call it new pos, because it will be the new position for the basket, and then equals, so we're looking at the transform of this particular object and its position. Okay, so this is actually a vector3 in its own right. Now I'm going to add our movement to the x component of new pos. So I'm going to add that on. So new pos.x plus equals. Now this means add on to. Okay, so new pos x is increased by or added to by movement. Now remember, movement could be a negative number. Okay, that just moves the basket a little way. And now I'm going to put new pos back into the transform position. And semicolon at the end of each line. Now before you go back to Unity, it's a good idea to check your code runs. Okay, so I've got this test button here. Now if everything's gone according to plan and I haven't made any mistakes, this should appear. There we are, that looks good. Now this also saves the code, which is so 2 birds with 1 stone really, so I'm going to stop that and then go back to Unity. I've got our script. Now you should in just a moment see this public variable appearing in the editor. There it is, so b speed is coming. So I'll give this a value, say 6. Now if you wanted to make the basket travel faster, you could increase the number. If you wanted to make it travel slower, you could decrease the number. Right, let's test that. So now we should find, using the A or D, or the left and right, that our basket can be moved left or right. One of the slight issues is we can move the basket right off screen, which we don't really want to be able to do. So we'll need to modify that code, and we'll do that in the next session. So if we just go back, save the scene. Okay, and see you next time.